Some houses are built to shelter life. This one was built to outlast death. Long before the rumors of ghosts, before stairways climbed into nothing, a woman sat alone with a fortune heavy enough to warp reality. What followed was not madness, but a quiet decision that would never end. Grief arrived in Sarah Winchester's life without spectacle. It came first with the death of her infant daughter, a loss so absolute it erased language itself. Years later, it returned with the slow fading of her husband, William, heir to an empire forged in gunfire and steel. When he died, Sarah did not scream. She inherited something far heavier than money. She inherited silence. The Winchester fortune was vast beyond reason, a river of wealth fed by rifles that had reshaped wars, borders, and lives. It arrived without instruction on how to live with it. In an age that expected widows to remarry or retreat, Sarah did neither. She withdrew from society's rituals, from condolences that felt rehearsed, from rooms where her name carried too much weight. People would later call her eccentric. They would mistake privacy for instability. What they never understood was that Sarah Winchester was not running from the world. She was refusing to perform her grief for it. In the years that followed, she became increasingly alone. Letters went unanswered. Visitors were rare. Servants learned that questions were unwelcome, not because Sarah was cruel, but because she was focused. Loss had narrowed her attention to a single unbearable truth. Nothing could be fixed. Nothing could be undone. And yet the money kept arriving. Every dollar was a reminder, a quiet accusation. This fortune had survived when her family had not. It demanded purpose, even as purpose felt obscene. For Sarah, stillness became impossible. A life without motion meant sitting with memories that pressed too close. Movement, then, was survival. California offered distance. Distance from expectations, distance from reminders, distance from the East, where her name echoed through boardrooms and newspapers. When Sarah traveled west, it was not with fanfare, it was an act of erasure, a woman stepping sideways out of her former life. The house began as nothing remarkable, a farmhouse, modest, temporary. But even in its earliest form, it carried intention. Rooms were added not for beauty but for motion. Hallways extended, walls shifted. There was no final design, no master plan, no moment where Sarah declared it finished. That was the point. While the world searched for explanations, Sarah Winchester found something more important. She found a way to keep moving, to wake each day with a task, to outbuild memory, to convert grief into structure, and silence into sound. The hammers had not yet begun their endless rhythm, but the decision had already been made. Stillness would not be allowed. Night folded itself gently around the room as candles were lit one by one. Their flames trembled, not from fear, but from the slow movement of air, from breath, from presence. Sarah Winchester sat still, hands folded, her face calm enough to be mistaken for indifference. Grief had already hollowed her out. There was little left to startle. The medium's voice was practiced, steady, designed to soothe and impress in equal measure. He spoke of currents unseen, of spirits unsettled, of consequences that followed violence long after the smoke cleared. He spoke as though the dead were not memories, but creditors. Sarah listened. Names were never mentioned. That was important. No faces either, only numbers, thousands. Lives ended by mechanisms her fortune had perfected. The Winchester rifle was praised in life for its efficiency, then condemned in death for the same reason. According to the man across from her, blood had memory. It lingered. It followed. Sarah did not interrupt. She had already lived long enough with guilt to recognize when someone was attempting to give it shape. The warning arrived carefully, wrapped in inevitability. The spirits, he claimed, were restless. They would not forgive. They would not forget. Survival required obedience. She must leave her old life behind. She must build. She must never stop. It was an elegant curse, impossible to prove, impossible to disprove, a threat that fed on fear rather than force. Sarah's expression did not change. If the man expected hysteria, he was disappointed. If he expected devotion, he did not receive it. What he encountered instead was something quieter and far more dangerous. He encountered a woman who had already accepted that life was governed by loss, not justice. She asked no questions. She made no vows. When the candles burned low and the séance ended, Sarah rose, thanked him politely, and returned to her carriage. The night swallowed the house behind her. Later, this meeting would be described as a turning point, as proof, as the moment a widow surrendered her reason to superstition. The truth was less theatrical. Sarah Winchester did not walk away convinced she was hunted by ghosts. She walked away with something else entirely. Permission. Permission to leave. Permission to withdraw from explanation. Permission to act without justifying herself to a world that had already decided her story. The medium believed he had delivered prophecy. In reality, he had offered a framework, a narrative strong enough to shield a private woman from public interrogation. If she built endlessly, the world would stop asking why she lived the way she did. Fear would answer for her. And fear, Sarah understood, was a language people respected. By morning, she had already begun to plan her departure, not because spirits demanded it, but because motion had proven necessary. The East held too many echoes, too many rooms where silence carried names. Whatever followed would belong to her alone. The ghosts had been named. What they truly concealed had not. The journey west was long enough to feel like erasure. Each mile carried Sarah Winchester farther from familiar streets, familiar faces, familiar condolences that arrived too late and stayed too long. Trains rattled across plains that seemed endless, landscapes wide enough to swallow a past whole. She welcomed the anonymity. Out here, no one expected her to be anything more than a passenger passing through. California greeted her without ceremony. The air was softer, the light less severe. There was space to breathe, and more importantly, space to disappear. In the Santa Clara Valley, orchards stretched outward in careful rows, ordered and alive, untouched by the weight of history that clung to eastern cities. Sarah purchased land without spectacle. Paperwork replaced sympathy. Transactions replaced conversation. The house she acquired was unremarkable. A simple farmhouse with narrow rooms and low ceilings, built for function rather than ambition. It suited her precisely because it held no expectations. There were no portraits watching from the walls, no inherited furniture demanding preservation. It was empty in the most honest way. Sarah walked through each room slowly, not as an owner, but as an observer. She measured space with her steps. She noted where light entered, where it failed. She listened to the way sound traveled, how it gathered and disappeared. Silence here felt different. It was not accusatory. It did not echo names. She slept better than she had in years. The first changes were modest. A wall extended, a room widened. A doorway shifted. Workers arrived with tools and questions and learned quickly that questions were unnecessary. Sarah did not dictate how things should look. She only insisted they continue. When one task ended, another replaced it. When materials ran low, more were ordered. There was no deadline. The house responded as if it had been waiting. It stretched outward without complaint. Additions layered over additions. Corridors bent where straight lines might have sufficed. What mattered was not symmetry, but momentum. Sarah rarely supervised directly. She listened from a distance. The rhythm of construction followed her through the day and into the night. Hammer strikes replaced thought. Saws erased memory. Progress became a form of relief. Locals began to notice. They spoke of the widow with endless money and no interest in completion. Some admired her generosity, Employment was steady, wages arrived on time, others whispered, uneasy with a project that refused to end. Sarah did not correct them. In this place, she was no longer defined by what she had lost. She was defined by what she was doing. Building was not creation in the traditional sense. It was avoidance refined into structure, a way to keep grief from settling long enough to root. As weeks turned into months, the house stopped feeling temporary. It became something else entirely. Not a home, not yet, but a process. A living thing that grew in response to need rather than design. For the first time since her losses, Sarah Winchester felt something close to control, and she did not intend to surrender it. The sound began quietly. A single hammer at dawn, a saw biting into wood by midday. By nightfall, the rhythm no longer paused. It carried through walls and into sleep, a steady pulse that refused silence. The house learned this rhythm quickly. It adjusted, expanded, absorbed it. Sarah Winchester insisted the work continue through the night. Lanterns were hung, shifts were divided. Fresh hands replaced tired ones without ceremony. There was no celebration when a room was finished, because nothing was ever finished. Completion suggested rest, and rest invited memory. The workers learned not to ask why. Some were carpenters by trade. Others learned on the job. Skill mattered less than willingness. Those who stayed longest understood the rules. Do the work, accept the payment, do not speculate aloud. Sarah rewarded loyalty with consistency. Wages never faltered, supplies never ran out. In uncertain times, the house offered certainty. Inside, the structure grew dense. Corridors multiplied. Rooms appeared behind rooms, some large, some narrow, some with no clear purpose. Stairs rose, turned, and rose again. Windows were placed where light was needed, not where tradition dictated. Practicality bowed to momentum. Sarah walked the house at odd hours. She memorized its changes by feel rather than sight. Her fingers brushed new walls. Her footsteps tested new floors. She did not correct mistakes. What others called errors, she accepted as part of the process. Straight lines were not required, only continuation. The noise became a shield. Each strike of metal against wood pushed the past further away. Grief could not speak over it. Regret could not compete. The house absorbed her attention fully, greedily, as if aware of its role. Neighbors complained at first. Then they adapted. The constant sound became a landmark. People gave directions using it. You could hear the Winchester place before you saw it. Some claimed the noise never stopped because something inside demanded it. Others joked that the house had grown used to being fed. Sarah never confirmed or denied anything. Her routine stabilized. She ate little. She slept lightly. Her days blurred into one long stretch of awareness, punctuated by planning. Blueprints were unnecessary. Instructions were delivered quietly, often altered mid-sentence as new ideas emerged. The house responded without resistance. Over time, even the workers began to feel disoriented. Familiar paths vanished overnight. Doors led somewhere new. Yesterday's shortcut became today's dead end. No one could claim mastery over the layout, not even those who had worked there for years. That, too, suited Sarah. Control did not come from understanding every detail. It came from knowing that nothing would ever stand still long enough to trap her. As long as the house changed, she could change with it. As long as it grew, she would not collapse inward. By the end of the first year, the farmhouse had vanished beneath additions. What remained was something restless, a structure that refused to settle into identity. A place defined not by walls, but by movement. The house did not sleep. Neither, in any meaningful sense, did Sarah Winchester. The house did not announce its transformation all at once. It revealed itself in fragments, in moments that unsettled without explanation. A staircase completed at dawn would no longer make sense by nightfall. A door installed with care would open onto something unexpected. Not danger exactly, but absence. A pause where continuation should have been. At first, these oddities were practical. A wall added too quickly. A plan revised mid-build. A carpenter misreading instructions that were never written down. But over time, coincidence failed as an explanation. Patterns emerged. Or rather, the refusal of patterns became the pattern itself. Stairs rose confidently and stopped at ceilings. Not broken ceilings, but smooth, finished ones. Doors opened into solid walls that bore no sign of haste or correction. Windows appeared where no one thought to look for them, low to the floor, high near the roof, angled toward nothing of interest. Chimneys climbed upward and ended abruptly, sealed as if their purpose had been reconsidered halfway through breath. The workers whispered now, though quietly, not out of fear of Sarah, but out of uncertainty about the space itself. They carried tools through hallways that bent just enough to confuse the eye. Rooms repeated in size, but not in orientation. Corners led to corners. Familiar landmarks dissolved. No one could say when the house crossed a line from eccentric to unsettling. It may not have crossed it at all. It may have erased the idea of lines entirely. Sarah Winchester observed all of this without comment. She never expressed dissatisfaction. She never requested corrections. When a foreman once asked whether a staircase should be removed, she looked at it for a long time, then shook her head. "Leave it," she said quietly. "It serves its purpose." No one asked what that purpose was. To understand her reasoning, one would have needed access to her private hours, to the way she moved through the house when no one else was awake. She walked without lamps. She had memorized the space well enough to trust it. Her steps slowed near transitions, where floor shifted to stair, where wall suggested passage and then denied it. These moments were not frustrating to her. They were grounding. Every dead end forced awareness. Every interruption demanded presence. The house refused to allow wandering thought. It pulled her into the immediate moment again and again, away from memory, away from regret. In a conventional home, movement is invisible. One passes through without noticing. In this house, movement required attention. Each choice mattered. Each step had consequence. The structure demanded participation. Sarah found comfort in that demand. The house also discouraged familiarity. No guest could grow accustomed to it. Visitors lost their sense of direction within minutes. Conversations broke apart as people focused on not colliding with unexpected walls. Laughter faded. Voices lowered. Some claimed this was deliberate, that Sarah sought to confuse spirits, to trap them, to lead them endlessly through corridors without escape. The idea spread easily. It satisfied the need for a supernatural explanation. But spirits, if they existed, would not need doors or stairs. They would not be misled by architecture. Humans, however, were another matter. The house dismantled expectation. It punished assumption. Anyone entering carried with them a mental map of how spaces should behave. The house shattered that map quickly and thoroughly. Left without reference, visitors became cautious. Quiet, exposed. Sarah never needed to ask for privacy. The house enforced it for her. As the years passed, the architecture grew more confident in its defiance. Decorative elements appeared where structure alone would have sufficed. Intricate woodwork framed doors that led nowhere. Stained glass filtered light into hallways that ended abruptly. Beauty was lavished on uselessness. It was an extravagant rejection of purpose. From the outside, the mansion expanded unevenly, a skyline of mismatched roofs and protruding towers. It resisted symmetry. It refused to present a single face. No matter where one stood, some portion of it was hidden, folded behind something newer, something older, something altered. Inside, the count of rooms climbed steadily. 100, 150, more. No one agreed on the number because the number refused to hold still. Spaces were divided, merged, reimagined. Closets became passages. Bedrooms lost relevance. Hallways widened into chambers and then narrowed again. There was no center. The absence of a central organizing principle disturbed observers more than any specific oddity. Grand houses typically declare hierarchy. This room matters more. That corridor leads somewhere important. This wing serves a purpose. The Winchester House rejected all of that. Every space was provisional. Every addition carried the understanding that it might be undermined tomorrow. Sarah rarely occupied the same bedroom for long. She moved when a room felt too settled, too knowable. Comfort was allowed only briefly. Familiarity bred memory, and memory was dangerous. Some nights, she stood at landings that ended in ceilings and rested her hand against the wood. She could feel the warmth retained from the day, the slight vibration from distant work. It reminded her that the house was active, responsive, alive, if one insisted on the word. She did not believe the house thought or watched. She believed it changed. That was enough. Workers came and went. Stories traveled with them. In nearby towns, people spoke of the house as if it were a puzzle designed to resist solving. Others spoke of it as a warning. There were those who refused employment, unwilling to step inside something that made them feel small. Yet there were always replacements. Economic downturns arrived and passed. Crops failed. Jobs vanished. The house remained constant in its demand for labor. For many, it was the difference between survival and hunger. They accepted the strangeness as a condition of stability. Sarah understood this arrangement. She never presented herself as benefactor, but the effect was undeniable. Her wealth circulated rather than stagnated. The house consumed money the way it consumed wood and glass, endlessly without apology. Critics accused her of waste, admirers accused her of genius. Neither label interested her. Waste implied excess. Genius implied intent others could decipher. Her intent was simpler. She was building a place where nothing could finish her story for her. Each architectural contradiction was a refusal to settle into widowhood, a refusal to memorialize the past, a refusal to allow meaning to crystallize into something unchangeable. In a world obsessed with order, the house embodied resistance. As years accumulated, the architecture grew denser, more layered. New staircases intersected older ones at odd angles. Windows installed earlier were sealed behind walls, their glass preserved in darkness. Doors that once opened into gardens now opened into rooms. The house remembered its own past even as it buried it. This layering created a sense of compression. History pressed inward rather than outward. Anyone sensitive to space could feel it. The walls carried weight not from spirits, but from repetition, from revision, from the accumulation of decisions never erased. Sarah seemed aware of this. She spent time alone in older sections, places the workers rarely visited anymore. She touched the preserved windows, the buried frames. These were not mistakes to be hidden. They were records. If grief had a physical form, it would look like this. Not a single wound, but a palimpsest of alterations, each one covering and revealing the last. The house did not resolve anything. It held contradictions intact. It allowed grief to exist without conclusion. Visitors struggled to articulate what unsettled them most. Some mentioned the dead ends, others the sense of being guided nowhere. Many spoke of fatigue, of feeling watched by the architecture itself, as if the walls expected something. What they felt was not menace. It was insistence. The house insisted on presence. It insisted on humility. It stripped away the illusion that the world conformed to logic simply because humans preferred it that way. Sarah Winchester understood this intimately. Logic had not protected her child. Logic had not preserved her husband. Logic had not restrained the violence that funded her fortune. Why then should logic dictate how a house must behave? The mansion became her rebuttal to the idea that meaning was inherent. meaning she seemed to suggest was constructed, provisional, and subject to revision. If that unsettled people, so be it. As the sun set each evening, shadows pooled in unexpected places. Corners lengthened. Light fractured through angled glass. The house rearranged perception as thoroughly as it rearranged space. And through it all, the construction continued. Hammer strikes echoed through corridors that led nowhere. Sawdust settled on stairs that touched ceilings. The sounds stitched old and new together without preference. The house did not ask to be understood. It asked only to continue. Stories rarely announce themselves at birth. They arrive quietly, almost shy, carried on lowered voices and unfinished sentences. This one began the same way. A carpenter mentioning a strange doorway to a neighbor. A delivery driver remarking on the noise that never ceased. A shopkeeper noting how often men came through town looking tired and paid. None of it sounded extraordinary at first. The house was large. The work was constant. The widow was private. These were facts, not mysteries. But facts, when repeated often enough, begin to invite embellishment. People lean into the gaps. They add color where silence remains. And Sarah Winchester left many gaps. She attended no church regularly. She hosted no gatherings. She offered no explanations. When asked about the house, she smiled politely and changed the subject. For a town accustomed to shared lives and shared stories, this refusal was unsettling. People needed reasons. If none were given, they would invent them. The first rumors framed her as eccentric. Wealth, after all, often excused odd behavior. Then the rumors sharpened. Why build so much? Why never finish? Why allow rooms that led nowhere? Someone recalled a rumor about a séance. Someone else claimed to know someone who had known the medium. Details shifted with each telling, but the core remained. Sarah Winchester had been warned. The dead were restless. Construction was protection. The idea spread quickly, not because it was proven, but because it was satisfying. A haunting gave shape to confusion. It offered motive where none was visible. It transformed architectural contradiction into intention. Better still, it absolved the living of responsibility. If the house was strange, it was because something unseen demanded it. Workers noticed the shift before Sarah did. Questions changed tone. Visitors arrived with curiosity rather than business. They lingered at the gates. They peered through windows. Some asked to be shown inside. Sarah declined politely. Refusal only fueled interest. Newspapers began to circle. Journalists arrived hoping to glimpse something sensational. They found little. No apparitions, no confessions, only a house in motion and a woman who would not perform. Articles hedged their language, according to locals. Rumors suggest. It is said. This phrasing protected writers from fact while granting readers permission to believe. The story gained momentum, not from evidence, but from repetition. The haunting became shorthand. It allowed strangers to discuss the house without confronting its more uncomfortable truths. Grief was abstract. Obsession was unsettling. But ghosts were familiar. Ghosts belonged to stories people already knew how to tell. Sarah remained unmoved by the speculation. She did not correct it, but neither did she confirm it. Silence, once again, did the work for her. Those who worked closest to her noticed something else. The rumors did not alter her behavior. Construction did not accelerate in response to fear. It did not slow with reassurance. The house grew as it always had, guided by internal logic no one else fully grasped. Still, the workers felt watched, though not by spirits. They felt watched by expectation. Every misplaced nail, every crooked stair now carried weight. It could become evidence, proof of madness, proof of haunting. Some leaned into this attention. A few embellished their experiences. They spoke of cold spots, of strange sounds, of the sense of being followed through corridors. Others said nothing, unwilling to become part of the spectacle. The house itself offered plenty of ambiguity. At night, shadows bent around corners. Sounds traveled oddly through layered rooms. A door closing far away could echo like footsteps. These were effects of structure, not spirits, but structure rarely receives credit. Visitors arrived hoping to feel something. Many did. They left convinced. Fear, once invited, fills the space provided. Local guides began to tell versions of the story to outsiders. It made the house legible. It turned confusion into narrative. The widow was no longer merely private. She was cursed. The house was no longer merely unfinished. It was a trap, a maze, a shield. These stories framed Sarah Winchester as either victim or fanatic. Both interpretations stripped her of agency. Both were easier to digest than the possibility that she was acting deliberately, even strategically. No one wanted to believe that a woman might choose obscurity, might engineer complexity simply to avoid intrusion. As the legend grew, so did the distance between Sarah and the public version of herself. She became a character shaped by other people's fears. In print, she was nervous, haunted, driven by terror of the dead. In reality, she remained measured, quiet, attentive to details others missed. She noticed the way people spoke to her differently, some with pity, some with fascination, a few with something like reverence, none with understanding. The haunting narrative granted the house a new kind of power. It transformed it from a private project into a destination. People came not to see architecture, but to confirm belief. They wanted chills. They wanted validation of their suspicions. When none appeared, they invented them. This dynamic did not trouble Sarah as much as it might have troubled someone else. The legend created distance. It discouraged intimacy. People rarely asked her about her past now. They asked about spirits. She could deflect those questions easily. In this way, the ghost story became a shield. It allowed Sarah to remain unknowable while appearing exposed. Everyone thought they understood her motivation. In reality, they were debating a fiction she had never endorsed. The newspapers grew bolder. Headlines flirted with certainty. Phrases like haunted mansion and restless spirits appeared more frequently. The lack of denial was interpreted as confirmation. No one considered that denial would have required engagement. Engagement would have invited further scrutiny. Silence was simpler. The irony was subtle and complete. A story designed to explain the house ended up explaining nothing. It distracted from the architecture itself, from its psychological weight, from the deliberate choices embedded in its contradictions. The haunting narrative also protected the house from rational critique. If something made no sense, it did not have to. Ghosts were not bound by logic. Questions ended where superstition began. Sarah understood this instinctively. She had lived long enough to see how people clung to stories that absolved them of deeper thought. The ghost story did that work beautifully. Inside the house, life continued unchanged. New wings rose, old sections were absorbed. The sound of work persisted. The architecture grew more layered, more resistant to easy interpretation. The house did not respond to its legend. It did not grow more theatrical. It did not accommodate expectations. If anything, it became quieter in its defiance. Sarah walked through it as she always had. She passed visitors who glanced at her with curiosity and fear. She nodded politely and moved on. Their version of her did not require her participation. The legend now had momentum independent of her. It traveled faster than truth. It reshaped itself with each retelling. It learned to walk on its own. Years later, people would insist the haunting was the reason for everything. They would cite the endless construction as proof. They would point to the strange architecture as evidence. They would overlook the simpler explanation because it was less comforting. A woman with unimaginable wealth had chosen to build a world that answered only to her. She had chosen complexity over closure. She had chosen movement over memory. That was harder to accept than ghosts. As the story spread, it hardened. It lost its edges. It became tradition. Children grew up hearing it. Visitors arrived already convinced. Guides recited it with practiced cadence. The haunting had become official. And still, Sarah Winchester said nothing. The house, patient and indifferent, continued to grow. Money, when discussed, tends to sound abstract. Numbers soften its edges. Percentages disguise its force. But inside the house, money was never theoretical. It arrived as lumber stacked in courtyards, as stained glass crated from distant cities, as wages folded carefully into envelopes at the end of every week. Wealth announced itself not through luxury, but through continuity. The house was expensive, but not wasteful in the way critics imagined. Nothing glittered for its own sake. There were no ballrooms filled with unused finery, no grand halls staged for admiration. What existed instead was flow. Materials arrived. Labor transformed them. The structure absorbed both and demanded more. Sarah Winchester understood money as motion. Stagnant wealth invited scrutiny. It attracted opinions. It invited claims of obligation. Circulated wealth, on the other hand, disappeared into systems too complex to unravel easily. The house was such a system. Property taxes in California were calculated with a keen eye toward completion. A finished structure could be assessed, measured, and valued. An unfinished one remained provisional, ambiguous, perpetually in progress. As long as walls shifted and plans evolved, the house resisted classification. This was not ignorance, it was awareness. Accountants came and went. Records were kept meticulously. Payments were punctual. Nothing about Sarah's finances suggested carelessness. On the contrary, the operation ran with a quiet efficiency that surprised those who assumed eccentricity implied disorder. The house was never declared complete, because completion was expensive in more ways than one, but tax considerations were only part of the equation. The greater effect lay in labor. The house became an employer long before it became a legend. Carpenters, masons, glaziers, plumbers, painters, metalworkers. Generations passed through its corridors with tools in hand. Some stayed months, others stayed years. A few built their entire working lives within its walls. Economic downturns came as they always do. Orchards suffered, markets tightened, jobs vanished elsewhere. The house did not pause. It did not renegotiate wages. It did not scale back ambition. For many families in the valley, the Winchester house was the difference between stability and displacement. This created loyalty, though Sarah never demanded it. She did not cultivate affection. She cultivated reliability. People trusted what did not change. Critics from outside the region accused her of indulgence, of pouring money into nonsense while others struggled. Those who lived nearby knew better. They understood that her spending did not vanish into spectacle. It circulated locally. It kept businesses alive. It kept skills employed. The house functioned as an economic organism. Sarah never spoke of charity. Charity implied hierarchy. It placed giver above receiver. Employment was different. It preserved dignity. It preserved distance. Workers were not beholden to gratitude. They exchanged labor for pay. Nothing more was required. Inside the house, the rhythm of work shaped daily life. Shifts overlapped, teams rotated, knowledge passed informally. There were no grand speeches, no declarations of purpose. Instructions were practical, often minimal. Build here, extend there, adjust as needed. This absence of grand design frustrated outsiders who sought symbolic meaning. Surely there must be a master plan. Surely no one could build so much without an ultimate vision. They misunderstood the nature of control. Control did not require a final image. It required responsiveness, the ability to adapt, to redirect, to revise without apology. The house allowed this flexibility precisely because it was never finished. Mistakes did not matter. Changes were not failures. Everything could be reworked. Sarah's approach mirrored a particular understanding of grief. Loss was not a problem to be solved. It was a condition to be managed. One did not overcome it. One built around it. The house absorbed labor the way it absorbed sorrow, without judgment, without endpoint. Workers noticed that Sarah treated their time with unusual respect. Meetings were brief, instructions were clear, payment was consistent. She did not waste effort on spectacle. She did not demand urgency for its own sake. This professionalism unsettled those who expected erratic behavior. The haunted widow narrative did not align with a woman who ran a complex operation smoothly for decades. Still, myths persisted. They always do. The house grew outward and upward, its skyline changing slowly but relentlessly. From a distance, it appeared chaotic. From within, patterns emerged. Not visual symmetry, but procedural logic. Materials were reused, sections were reinforced, new additions learned from old ones. Sarah listened carefully to craftsmen. She valued expertise. When a builder suggested an alternative approach, she considered it. Authority was not asserted loudly. It was exercised quietly. The house benefited from this approach. It became structurally sound despite its eccentricity. Reinforced beams supported unexpected loads. Foundations were strengthened as additions accumulated. The mansion did not collapse under its own contradictions. It endured. This endurance contradicted the popular image of a woman driven by fear. Fear does not sustain decades of careful management. Panic does not balance books. Terror does not maintain payrolls through economic uncertainty. What sustained the house was intention. Sarah's wealth was vast enough to attract attention, but her spending habits were surprisingly restrained. She lived simply. Her personal rooms were modest compared to the scale of the structure. She did not adorn herself extravagantly. The house was where money went, not to indulgence but to activity. Observers often missed this distinction. They imagined a woman drowning in luxury, lost in delusion. The reality was quieter. A woman directing resources toward perpetual motion, ensuring that nothing ever settled long enough to confront her with stillness. The house also created separation between Sarah and the public. Its scale made access difficult. Its layout discouraged lingering. Visitors rarely found her. Those who did encountered a composed figure who offered no spectacle. This separation was valuable. The house allowed Sarah to remain both visible and unreachable. People could point to it as evidence of strangeness while knowing almost nothing about her daily life. Scrutiny focused on walls and staircases rather than on her history, her choices, her interior world. The architecture drew attention away from the person who funded it. As years passed, the operation became self-sustaining. Foremen anticipated needs. Suppliers knew schedules. The house developed habits. It expected certain rhythms. Deviations were noticeable. Sarah was aware of this. She allowed the system to function with minimal interference. Control did not require constant oversight once patterns were established. In this sense, the house outgrew her without escaping her influence. Critics sometimes accused her of manipulating tax laws, of exploiting loopholes. They framed this as moral failure, but the accusation revealed more about societal discomfort with female autonomy than about her ethics. A man managing wealth strategically was called savvy. A woman doing the same was called suspicious. Sarah did not respond to these critiques. She had no interest in moral theater. Her choices were pragmatic. They served her needs and supported others incidentally. The house stood as proof that wealth could be deployed without spectacle, that influence could be exercised without visibility. And still, the legend preferred ghosts. Ghosts absolved people of examining how money truly functioned. Ghosts explained away the uncomfortable reality that a woman could choose complexity over convention and manage it competently for nearly 4 decades. As the mansion expanded, it absorbed more labor, more resources, more attention. It became impossible to ignore. It was too large to dismiss, too strange to categorize, too persistent to fade. Yet beneath the rumors and myths, the mechanics remained mundane. Payrolls, invoices, supply chains, maintenance. The supernatural narrative never touched these details because they were too ordinary, too human. Inside the house, the sound of work continued. Hammers struck, glass was set, walls rose. The process did not feel frantic. It felt deliberate. Sarah Winchester walked through the structure as she always had, aware of its role beyond architecture. It was shelter, employment, deflection, therapy, and strategy combined. The house was not irrational. It was expensive, yes, unusual, certainly, but it was also effective. It accomplished exactly what she required of it. It kept the world at a distance. It kept memory in motion, and it ensured that nothing, not grief, not money, not expectation, could ever fully settle. The longer Sarah Winchester lived inside the house, the more difficult it became to separate structure from thought. Rooms no longer felt like destinations. They felt like pauses, transitions, breathing spaces between one intention and the next. The house did not guide her. It responded to her. She woke before dawn most days, not from restlessness, but from clarity. Morning light filtered unevenly through glass set at angles that softened its arrival. No single window dominated. Light came in fragments, as memory did, never all at once. This suited her. She dressed simply and began to walk. There was no set route. Repetition dulled awareness, so she avoided it. If a corridor became too familiar, she altered it. A doorway shifted. A partition appeared. Familiarity was permitted only briefly, like comfort, like sleep. The house rewarded this vigilance. It kept her alert, present. It demanded choice at every turn, left or right, up or down, stop or continue. Even hesitation became a form of engagement. Grief, when given too much stillness, grows loud. Here, it had to keep pace. Sarah rarely thought of her daughter directly anymore. The pain was still there, but it no longer arrived as a single overwhelming force. It had been distributed, absorbed. The house carried some of it now. Each interruption in design held a fragment of that loss, contained but not erased. The same was true of her husband. His absence no longer haunted specific rooms. It was embedded in the ongoing act of construction itself. The refusal to finish. The refusal to close the door on possibility. People who spoke of healing misunderstood its nature. Healing suggested return. Sarah did not want to return to anything. She wanted to move forward without resolution. The house allowed this. It did not demand narrative. It did not ask her to explain. It did not insist on meaning. It accepted contradiction as natural. She noticed how visitors reacted differently depending on their temperament. Those who sought certainty grew frustrated quickly. They asked questions the house would not answer. Where does this lead? Why is this here? What is the point? Those who accepted uncertainty lasted longer. They wandered. They observed. They grew quiet. Some found the experience calming, others unsettling. Sarah watched these reactions with interest. The house acted as a kind of mirror. It revealed what people brought with them. In this way, it became diagnostic. Her own reactions mattered most. When she felt impatient, she paused. When she felt comfortable, she disrupted that comfort. The house evolved in response to her internal state. It was less a shelter than an externalized mind, capable of revision without apology. This flexibility was rare. Most lives hardened with age, habits calcified, routines narrowed. Sarah resisted this by design. If the house could change endlessly, so could she. Some nights she stood alone in unfinished rooms and listened to the building settle. Wood expanded and contracted with temperature. Nails shifted imperceptibly. The house spoke in small sounds, not voices, but reminders of physical reality. These sounds grounded her. They confirmed that something tangible existed beneath abstraction, beneath rumor, beneath story. The legend that surrounded her never touched these moments. No ghost narrative accounted for the patience required to live this way, for the discipline, for the attention to detail. Fear burns hot and fast. This life required endurance. Sarah kept her personal quarters modest and fluid. She moved them often. Bedrooms became studies. Studies became storage. Nothing was permanent enough to become sacred. She did not want shrines. Shrines fix memory in place. They invite mourning without movement. The house refused to become one. As years accumulated, her internal sense of time shifted. Days were measured not by calendars, but by changes completed. A stair installed, a window repositioned, a wall absorbed. Time became architectural. This altered her perception of aging. She did not feel herself growing old in the conventional sense. Her body aged, certainly, but her mind remained engaged, challenged daily by the need to decide, to adapt, to revise. The house demanded participation. It did not allow withdrawal. Those who claimed she was hiding misunderstood the nature of engagement. Withdrawal implies retreat. Sarah was not retreating. She was investing attention elsewhere. The world beyond the house grew louder with speculation. Inside, that noise faded. The architecture filtered it out. Thick walls, indirect paths, distance created through complexity. The house did not isolate her. It insulated her. There were moments of doubt. She was human. Occasionally, a space felt too empty, too quiet. In those moments, she ordered work to begin there immediately. Noise filled the void. Motion replaced introspection. This was not avoidance, it was regulation. She had learned what happened when grief went unregulated. She had lived through that collapse once. She would not allow it again. The house became her instrument. Observers spoke of obsession as though it were inherently destructive. They overlooked its function. Obsession, when directed, could sustain. It could organize chaos. It could transform pain into process. Sarah's obsession was not with ghosts. It was with continuity. As her hair grayed and her movements slowed, the house adjusted. Stair heights changed. Handrails appeared. Routes shortened. The architecture accommodated her without announcing the accommodation. She aged within it without surrendering agency. This, perhaps, was the most radical aspect of the house. It allowed a woman to grow old without shrinking her world. Most environments do the opposite. They narrow choice. They simplify. They protect at the cost of autonomy. Sarah refused that trade. The house remained complex, demanding, alive with possibility. It respected her capacity rather than anticipating her decline. In this environment, her mind remained sharp, focused, curious. She was not haunted by the past. She was accompanied by it, distributed across space, diluted through design. When people later claimed the house felt alive, they mistook cause for effect. The house did not possess awareness. It carried intention. That intention was renewed daily through choice. A mind had been built into it, not in walls alone, but in the refusal to finalize, to explain, to resolve. Sarah Winchester did not need to articulate this philosophy. She lived it. Each addition was a thought externalized. Each dead end a boundary acknowledged. Each revision a reminder that nothing had to remain as it was. The house did not cure grief. It gave it somewhere to go. Sarah Winchester died quietly, as she had lived for years. There was no crowd, no spectacle, no dramatic pause in the world outside her walls. She passed in her sleep, surrounded not by family, but by the vast architecture that had absorbed her days, her thoughts, and her endurance. And then, for the first time in decades, the house fell silent. The hammers stopped mid-cycle. The saws went still. Workers arrived that morning expecting instructions and found none waiting for them. Foremen stood uncertain in hallways that no longer knew what to become next. Tools were set down. Lanterns were extinguished. The sound that had defined the house for 38 years vanished in a single breath. The silence was immediate and complete. It spread through corridors like a held note finally released. Wood settled. Dust drifted. The house, long accustomed to motion, did not know what to do with stillness. For the first time since its transformation began, nothing changed. Word traveled quickly, faster than it ever had during Sarah's life. Newspapers seized the moment with an appetite sharpened by years of restraint. Headlines announced the death of the haunted widow. Articles revisited every rumor, every staircase, every door that opened into nothing. And now, finally, the story could be told without interference. Writers framed the silence as proof. If the spirits had demanded construction, then death explained the halt. The logic was simple, seductive, and deeply flawed. No one asked why the spirits would stop so obediently. No one questioned why fear, if it had driven her, produced such order for so long. The house was rebranded overnight. What had once been a private labyrinth became a public artifact. Curiosity hardened into certainty. Tours were planned. Narratives were standardized. The ghost story once whispered was now recited with confidence. In death, Sarah Winchester lost control of her own explanation. Rooms that had served no audience suddenly received one. Guides pointed out dead ends with theatrical pauses. They lowered their voices in places where Sarah had walked freely. They transformed design into warning, intention into compulsion. The house, stripped of its living author, could no longer revise itself. This finality changed it. Without construction, contradictions became fixed. What had once been provisional hardened into symbol. The architecture stopped responding and began to represent. Meaning settled where none had been allowed before. Visitors felt something shift. Some called it unease, others called it presence. What they were sensing was not ghosts, but absence. The absence of decision, the absence of change. For decades, the house had refused to conclude. Now it had no choice. Workers who had spent years inside it felt the loss acutely. They spoke of the house as if it had aged suddenly, as if something essential had withdrawn. Without the daily rhythm of work, the structure felt heavier, more inert. It was no longer becoming. Sarah had left no manifesto, no explanation, no confession to be discovered in a drawer. Her will was precise, but emotionally opaque. She had arranged her affairs with the same quiet competence that had defined her life. Those who searched her belongings for answers found only evidence of restraint. The world, dissatisfied with this restraint, filled the silence with its own voice. The haunting narrative crystallized in the years that followed. It became the official version because it was repeatable. It offered visitors an emotional experience without requiring them to confront wealth, grief, autonomy, or time. It was easier to fear spirits than to consider what decades of isolation and unlimited resources could produce in a focused mind. The house, now frozen, watched generations pass through it. People arrived seeking chills and left with photographs. Few noticed the deeper unease, the sense that something human had been interrupted mid-thought. The greatest irony went largely unspoken. If Sarah had been building to escape ghosts, death should have unleashed them. If construction had been her shield, the silence should have invited catastrophe. Nothing happened. The house did not erupt with violence. No curse followed. No reckoning arrived. What remained was structure without author, motion without motive, complexity without explanation. In the end, the noise had not been keeping ghosts away. It had been keeping something else alive. Today, the house stands finished only in the way a sentence ends when the speaker is interrupted. Visitors move through it slowly, guided by voices that promise explanation but deliver comfort instead. They are told where to look, They are told what to feel. They are told what frightened Sarah Winchester, as if fear were the only force capable of shaping a life. But the house resists these conclusions. It does not behave like a relic. It does not rest easily in the past. Even now, it unsettles without spectacle. People lose their bearings. They forget which direction they entered from. Conversations thin out. Laughter fades. The architecture does not threaten. It observes. Every staircase that ends abruptly asks the same question without words. Why do you expect progress to be linear? Every door that opens into a wall challenges the idea that effort guarantees reward. The house does not punish, it reveals. Modern visitors speak of feeling watched. They say the house is alive. They say it remembers. What they sense is not a presence moving through halls, but intention embedded in space, the pressure of a mind that refused closure. Sarah Winchester is no longer here to redirect the story. Her silence has become permanent. In that silence, the world has chosen its version. A haunted widow, a cursed fortune, a supernatural obsession. But look closely at what remains. The house does not center ghosts. It centers interruption. It disrupts expectation with precision. It dismantles certainty without offering replacement. This is not the work of panic. Panic is erratic. This structure is consistent in its refusal. What unsettles people is not the possibility of spirits, but the possibility that everything here was deliberate. Grief did not destroy Sarah Winchester. It reorganized her. Unlimited money did not corrupt her imagination. It freed it from restraint. Isolation did not weaken her mind. It allowed it to externalize itself without negotiation. The house is not a warning about madness. It is a warning about what happens when the human mind is left alone with time, loss, and the means to act without permission. Most people never encounter such conditions. Their lives are interrupted by necessity, by deadlines, by judgment, by the need to explain themselves. Sarah Winchester had none of those constraints, so she built her interior world outward. The result is not chaos, it is accumulation, layer upon layer of unresolved thought, preserved rather than buried. The house does not let the past rest because Sarah never asked it to. That is why it still feels unfinished. That is why it still feels attentive. This place does not ask whether you believe in ghosts. It asks whether you believe meaning is always visible, whether intention must announce itself, whether a life must make sense to anyone other than the person living it. Most visitors leave with photographs, some leave with stories, a few leave unsettled in a quieter way. They sense that the house is not performing for them. It does not need their belief. It is complete in its incompleteness. And that is the most disturbing truth of all. Because if this house was not built by ghosts, then what stands here is far more uncomfortable. A woman turned grief into architecture, turned wealth into motion, turned isolation into a structure that still challenges those who enter it. The house is not haunted, it is thinking. And here is the question that lingers long after the tour ends, the one no guide ever asks out loud. If Sarah Winchester had lived another 10 years, another 20, another lifetime, what shape would the house have taken next? What corners of the mind had not yet been built? What contradictions were still waiting for form? If this story unsettled you, it should have. Because this house proves that the most frightening creations are not born from spirits, but from human minds given time, silence, and no reason to stop. If you want to keep exploring the places where history, psychology, and obsession collide, hit that like so. This story does not disappear into silence. Subscribe to the channel because the next door we open does not lead into a wall. It leads into something far more personal.